Good morning. Welcome back to the program. After weeks on the back foot over the economy and immigration, the government has come out swinging on climate change. A move by the coalition to abandon the 2030 emissions target has reignited talk of an early election, and it threatens to rip open some old wounds in the Liberal National Party as well. Let's go live now to our political reporter Cameron Reddin in Canberra. Cam, some members of the Nats are already demanding that Peter Dutton back out of the Paris Accord altogether.
They are. The climate war's firing up once again, Laura. The coalition yet to even confirm that it will announce a new 2030 target before the next election, instead saying it wants to do a whole range of modelling between now and then, and it'll have more to say before the next election. But it has raised questions about whether the coalition will abandon interim targets altogether. This is the current state of play. Labor has signed up and legislated to a 43% emissions cut by 2030. The current projected outcome of all the current policies, not including the recent budget, it's worth pointing out, has Australia on track to cut 42%. So within one, the government says the budget will add to that, and it is within striking distance, but the current projection has us just falling short. The coalition, as I say, not committing to identifying a new figure for 2030 or even for a figure for 2035, which Australia is due to sign up to by the early stages of next year. And what this new debate has allowed some within the coalition to do is essentially return to some of the language that we heard before the last election. One member that's been vocal in the past, and is again so today, is the National Senator Matt Canavan. Peter Dutton has said that backing away from that 2030 43% target doesn't mean Australia needs to rip up its position in the Paris Accord and remains committed to net zero by 2050. Matt Canavan, though, suggesting that he wants to see the coalition go even further and step out of Paris altogether.
I think we should get out of this whole ridiculous facade. It is a facade because no other country in the world is really taking this seriously except Australia. People are just not buying this exaggerated crisis, or existential crisis, sometimes people describe, about climate change. It's costing people too much.
There he calls 2030 a facade target, the climate change issue exaggerated in some parts. It's the sort of language that won't be well received by moderate factions or moderate parts of the Liberal Party or the coalition. The government going well and truly on the front foot on this issue. It believes climate and energy could be the number one issue at the next election, the further the two parties drift apart. Murray Watt, the Agriculture Minister, going on the attack for the government today, saying there's too much at stake to walk away from Australia's global commitments.
We cannot afford as a country to not do this. There are so many jobs that are increasingly dependent on moving towards cheaper, cleaner energy. Our trade internationally is dependent on it as well. There are jobs on the line here, and Peter Dutton and the coalition just want to throw that away.
Yeah, there's no way that this issue is going to be going ahead of a cost of living anytime soon. Wishful thinking perhaps from the Labor Party. And even the UN is saying that no G20 nations are on track to meet 2030 targets as stated in the Paris Accord. So we'll see where that ends up and see if we can get a bit of honesty about what is actually achievable. But Cam, interesting to look at this extrapolated news poll today. It has run a character assessment essentially on the two leaders. What's it found?
Yeah, a bit of word association, if you like, Laura. It's essentially looked at what the voters, what people in the public think of Anthony Albanese and of Peter Dutton and how they think they would lead Australia going forward. A little bit of a character assessment, if you like. These are some of the traits that the Prime Minister currently leads on likeability, on being in touch with voters, of caring for people, and also of being trustworthy. Traits usually associated typically with Labor leaders. As for Peter Dutton, and these are really interesting, these are the words that were that he was leading on, in you like, these areas, on being experienced, on being decisive and strong. Note much of the language the coalition uses, the strong versus weak dynamic they play into, that he gets and understands the major issues. And this is the big one, on having a vision for Australia. And all the time Newspoll has been conducting these questions and these character assessments since the last election, Laura, this is the first time Peter Dutton has led Anthony Albanese on having a vision for Australia. Now, this was being conducted over the course of the last week or so before this climate issue really hit the fore. Between now and the election, it'll be interesting to see how that shifts as the coalition leans into this nuclear policy pitch and details more of its policies ahead of the next election.
We'll check in with Redbridge Group to see if their research is coming up with the same stuff. Cam, thank you.